A pregnant woman burst into a biker bar in the middle of a raging storm, clutching her belly and begging for help. "He's going to kill us," she gasped her husband. A corrupt cop with power and rage was right behind her. The Iron Demons had seen blood, war, and betrayal, but never something like this. Their leader, Jack, looked into her terrified eyes, and that night he had to choose, ride away from trouble or stand his ground for something still worth believing in. If you believe in redemption, brotherhood, and God's miracles, follow this channel for more powerful stories. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and may God bless every soul still fighting their storm. Rain lashed against the desolate highway of northern Montana, turning the asphalt into a mirror of trembling light. The Iron Demons Bar sat at the edge of the road, a squat brick building with rusted neon letters that blinked in defiance of the storm. Inside, the smell of gasoline and whiskey clung to the air like ghosts that refused to leave. It was here, amid the thunder and the roar of unseen engines, that Jessica appeared. She was 28, tall but frail, with wet auburn hair clinging to her pale face. Her green eyes, once bright, were hollow with exhaustion. Her coat was torn at the shoulder, her hands shaking as they clutched the curve of her 8-month belly. Every step looked like pain, physical and something deeper, older, festering behind her ribs. The baby moved inside her, reminding her she still had a reason to keep walking. When the door creaked open, the bikers turned, their laughter and music cutting off in an instant. Thunder rolled behind her like a beast, growling at the threshold. Jessica's voice trembled, soft but clear. "Please, I need help." At the far end of the bar sat Jack, the leader of the Iron Demons. He was in his late 40s, built like the kind of man who had spent half his life lifting engines and the other half burying friends. His hair was streaked with iron grey, his beard trimmed but uneven. A scar ran from his temple to the corner of his mouth, a relic from a knife fight in another life. People said he rarely spoke unless there was something worth saying, but when he did, men listened. He raised his gaze slowly, studying the woman dripping on his floor. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low, roughened by years of smoke and regret. Jessica swayed, almost collapsing, before one of the younger bikers, Ray, a tattooed kid no older than 25, hurried to catch her. She winced as he guided her to a chair. The bar lights flickered over her face, revealing bruises half hidden beneath her collar. "My name is Jessica Hale," she said. I'm being hunted." The room stilled, even the jukebox seemed to go quiet. Jack set his glass down, eyes narrowing. "Hunted by who?" She swallowed hard. "By my husband, Marcus Hale. He's a police officer, a detective." That name made even Ray step back. They all knew Marcus Hale, a man with friends in high places, a temper like gasoline, and rumors that followed him like smoke. Jessica continued, her voice breaking under the weight of memory. "He found out this baby isn't his. He said he'd kill me before he lets the world know. I ran 2 days ago. He has everyone looking for me. I didn't know where else to go." Jack leaned forward, elbows on the bar. His eyes softened just enough to reveal the man beneath the leather. "Why come here?" Jessica hesitated, then reached into her soaked coat and pulled out an old photograph. Its corners curled, the image faded with time. She placed it on the counter with trembling fingers. 5 men stood beside their motorcycles under a summer sky. One of them, smiling, young and strong, had Jack's arm around his shoulder. Jack froze. His throat worked before words came out. "Where did you get this?" Jessica looked down, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "That's my father, Dean Myers. He died when I was 6. He told my mother before the cancer took her that if I was ever in trouble, I should find the Iron Demons. He said you'd keep your word." For a long time, no one moved. The storm outside seemed to listen. Then, Jack rose from his stool, his heavy boots echoing on the wooden floor. He picked up the photograph, ran a thumb over the face of the man beside him, young Dean Myers, all grin and recklessness, and exhaled. "Dean saved my life once," Jack said quietly. "We were brothers long before blood meant anything." He was the kind of man who didn't walk away from danger, even when it wasn't his. He looked at Jessica, really looked this time not as a stranger, but as the last piece of a friend he'd lost. "If you're his daughter," he said, "then you're one of us." Jessica's breath hitched. "You don't understand. He'll come for me. He'll come for the baby." Jack's expression hardened like steel cooling in water. "Then let him." The other bikers stirred uneasily. Tank, a massive man with a beard that hid most of his neck, stepped forward. He had once been a mechanic in the Marines, before an explosion took part of his hearing. He spoke slowly, his voice a rumble. "Boss, if she's right, bringing her here paints a target on all of us." Jack didn't blink. "We've been targets before. Difference is, this time we shoot back." Jessica gripped the edge of the counter, desperate. "He's not just a man with a badge. He owns people. Judges, officers, friends. He'll twist everything until you look like the villains." Jack almost smiled sadly, knowingly. "People already think we're villains, sweetheart. That's what makes us dangerous." She wanted to believe him, but her heart was a tangle of fear and guilt. She thought of Marcus's eyes when he discovered the truth, cold, sharp, almost delighted by her terror. The last time she saw him, he had whispered, "You can't hide from the law, Jess." "I am the law." Now every thunderclap sounded like his voice chasing her. "Does anyone else know you're here?" Jack asked. Jessica shook her head. "I ditched my phone, I think." Tank frowned. "You think?" She pulled the phone from her coat pocket. It was cracked, half dead. Jack's eyes flicked to Snake, the club's tech man, a wiry figure with restless hands and the haunted look of someone who'd seen too much screen light and not enough sunlight. Snake took the phone, already prying open the case with a pocket knife. "There's a tracker chip in this model," he muttered. "If it's still active, they'll be here soon." Jessica's pulse jumped. "How long?" Snake shrugged. "Depends who's tracking. 10 minutes, maybe 5. Jack turned to the group. "Wolf, Tank, lock the back door. Ray, lights off. Snake, destroy the phone." They moved instantly, their discipline more like soldiers than outlaws. Within seconds, the room fell into dim shadows, lit only by the glow of neon beer signs. Jessica's heart pounded. Jack faced her again, calm amid the storm. "You're safe here, for now. When he comes, we'll handle him our way." Jessica stared at him, disbelief and gratitude colliding in her chest. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Jack picked up the photograph once more. "Because your father once stood between me and a bullet meant for my head." He didn't ask why either. Outside, thunder rolled closer. Jessica could hear the distant hum of engines, not thunder now, but vehicles, more than one. Snake looked up from the shattered remains of her phone. "Too late," he said quietly. "They found us." Jack's gaze shifted toward the door, his jaw tightening. He reached under the bar and pulled out a shotgun polished by years of use. The bikers followed suit, loading weapons in grim silence. Jessica's breath came in shallow bursts. She clutched her stomach, whispering to the baby, "Hold on, just a little longer." Jack moved toward the window, parting the blinds just enough to see flashing lights approaching through the rain. He exhaled slowly, then turned to his men. "Remember, boys," he said, voice steady, "we don't shoot first. But we don't fall easy either." Lightning flashed, illuminating the Iron Demon symbol on the back wall, a winged skull over 2 crossed pistons. For a moment, it looked like it was watching them, waiting. Jack looked once more at Jessica. "If he steps through that door, he won't leave the same man." Her fingers trembled against the bar counter. The wind howled through the cracks of the building, and for the first time that night, she wasn't sure whether she feared the storm outside or the storm she had brought inside. Then came the sound of tires skidding to a stop on wet gravel. Headlights flooded the windows in white. Jack's hand tightened around the shotgun. "Showtime," he murmured. And as thunder cracked overhead, Jessica's world narrowed to the sound of her heartbeat and the echo of her father's voice. "When the world turns against you, find iron. They'll never run." Outside, a car door slammed, then another. The storm had found them. The storm had not passed. It only changed its voice from thunder to engines. The sound grew from the distance like a swarm of metallic wasps vibrating through the walls of the Iron Demon's bar. Jack stood by the window, his broad silhouette cut against the glow of lightning. He didn't need Snake's confirmation to know who was coming. Marcus Hale had found them. "Tank, get her to the back," Jack ordered. His tone was calm, almost too calm, the kind of calm that comes before a gunfight. Tank nodded once. His massive frame moved toward the door behind the bar, where Jessica waited. He found her hunched over a wooden crate, pale and trembling. She was trying to breathe evenly, one hand clutching her stomach. The other gripped the photograph of her father like a relic. "You're safe here," Tank said, his deep voice softening. His beard dripped with rain, his leather jacket creaked with every movement. "Just stay quiet, sweetheart. We've handled worse." Jessica looked up at him. His eyes were gentle despite the scars on his face. "He'll kill anyone who stands in his way," she whispered. Tank gave a humorless grin. "Then he's picked the wrong bar." The room behind the bar was an old repair bay, dusty but familiar. Tools hung on the walls like old soldiers waiting for orders. Jessica recognized one of the benches from her childhood, its surface still scarred with burn marks, her father once called battle wounds. The memory squeezed her heart. She lowered herself onto a stool, breathing through another cramp. Out front, the roar of engines stopped. Headlights painted long white scars across the rain. Jack's hand hovered near the shotgun. Ray and Wolf flanked the doorway, their weapons hidden beneath their coats. Then the door swung open. Marcus Hale entered like a storm wearing human skin. He was in his mid-30s, tall, clean-shaven, with sharp cheekbones and a polished uniform that gleamed even in the rain. His short blonde hair was slicked back, and his eyes, icy blue, held no warmth, only calculation. Behind him came 4 officers, all in plain clothes, their badges flashing under their jackets. "Evening, gentlemen," Marcus said, voice calm but cutting. "I'm looking for my wife." Jack didn't move. "You lost her, huh? Maybe she ran for a reason." Marcus smiled without humor. "You must be Jack Sullivan. I've heard about you, former outlaw, now pretending to play the noble leader. You know, harboring a fugitive is a federal offense." "Then call the feds," Jack said. "But something tells me you didn't bring this little parade to follow the rules." Marcus stepped closer, his boots leaving wet prints on the floor. "You're right, I didn't." He scanned the room, his gaze landing on Wolf, whose broad shoulders and calm eyes didn't flinch. "And you look familiar." Wolf said nothing. His voice, when it came, was a low growl. "You should have stayed in Silver Creek." The tension in the room tightened like a noose. Marcus's smirk faltered for a heartbeat. Then he turned back to Jack. "I won't ask twice. Where is she?" Jack took a slow sip of his drink before answering. "Where she should have been all along. Somewhere safe." Marcus's jaw flexed. He motioned to one of his men, a stocky officer named Peterson, with cold grey eyes and the kind of face that looked carved from concrete. Peterson had a crooked nose and a patchy beard. He was the kind of man who followed orders because it spared him from thinking. "Search the back," Marcus ordered. Peterson moved toward the rear hallway. Before he could reach the door, Wolf stepped forward, blocking his path. "You're not going anywhere." Marcus folded his arms. "Move aside." Wolf didn't move. His black hair was damp from sweat and rain, his expression unreadable. There was something ancient about him, a stillness that made the air feel heavier. The silence stretched until Marcus exhaled through his nose, almost amused. "You're going to regret that." Then, from the back room, a sound broke the tension, a muffled groan, Jessica's voice in pain. Marcus's head snapped toward the noise. His face darkened like a cloud swallowing the moon. He pushed past Wolf, but Jack's voice stopped him cold. "Take another step, and you'll need a new pair of knees." The shotgun cocked. The metallic click echoed through the room. For the first time, Marcus's mask cracked. "You're making a mistake, old man." Jack's eyes didn't waver. "I've made plenty, but I don't repeat them." Wolf moved closer, his voice steady. "You don't belong here, Marcus. Go home." Marcus laughed, sharp and bitter. "Home? She was my home, and she burned it down." He pulled back his coat, revealing the pistol holstered at his side. "I'll take her back myself." Before anyone could react, lightning flared. Outside, and in that flash of white, Marcus moved. His hand went for the gun. Wolf lunged, faster than anyone expected, and in a blur, he slammed Marcus against the wall. The two men grappled, the crash sending bottles and glass shattering to the floor. Tank burst through the hallway door, his voice booming. "Boss, we've got a problem. She's in pain. The baby's coming early." Jessica's cries echoed faintly behind him. Marcus tried to twist free, his elbow catching Wolf in the ribs. "You think you can keep her from me?" "That child is mine," Wolf snarled, pinning him harder. "No, Marcus. That child is the one thing that will never be yours." Jack moved forward, leveling the shotgun inches from Marcus's face. "You've got 5 seconds to walk out that door, detective." Marcus's eyes flicked between them, the wolfish calm of one man and the deadly certainty of the other. He forced a thin smile. "You think this ends here? You're all dead men." Jack didn't answer. He simply nodded to Wolf. Wolf shoved Marcus toward the door, sending him stumbling into the rain. The other officers hesitated, uncertain whether to follow their commander or save themselves. Finally, Marcus turned, fury boiling beneath his polished composure. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Good," Jack said quietly. "I'm not done either." The door slammed shut. The engines outside roared back to life, and the sound faded into the storm. For a long moment, no one spoke. The men stood in the half-dark, breathing hard, the smell of wet gun oil and whiskey thick around them. Jack lowered the shotgun. "Tank," he said, "take Ray and Wolf. Stay with her. Whatever happens, that baby lives. You understand?" Tank nodded. "You got it, boss." As they disappeared down the hallway, Jack remained by the bar, staring at the rain beating against the window. He knew Marcus would come back. Men like him always did. But for tonight, the iron demons had drawn their line in the storm. Outside, the thunder rolled on, but inside, the silence felt heavier than steel. The night outside had turned black as burnt oil. The storm seemed to circle the bar like a predator, pacing just beyond the windows. Inside, the iron demons worked in silence, the kind of silence that came before blood was spilled. Wolf sat on the edge of the bar, clutching his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. His hand came away slick with crimson. He tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped it tight. The pain didn't bother him, it was the memories that did. Silver Creek, the smell of rust and bleach, the echo of boots in a corridor that never saw sunlight. He had seen Marcus Hale there, back when Marcus still wore a soldier's badge instead of a police one. Wolf remembered the prisoner barely 20, scared and broken, and how Marcus had beaten the boy to death for disobeying an order. Wolf had spoken up once. That night, 2 men had held him down, while Marcus carved a scar across his back as a warning. That scar still burned in the rain. Jack stood near the phone, his broad shoulders turned away from the others. The receiver crackled softly as he spoke in low tones to someone on the other end. "Listen, Tom," he said. "I'm calling in that favor. You've got a dirty cop named Marcus Hale heading my way, with half a department behind him. You know what he's capable of. I need internal affairs here, fast." Tom Reynolds, Jack's old army friend turned federal investigator, answered with the gravelly voice of a man who had long ago traded hope for duty. "You sure you want me to open that can of worms, Jack?" Jack's eyes flicked to the hallway where Jessica's cries echoed faintly. "I'm already knee-deep in it," he said. "Might as well wade through." In the back room, Tank knelt beside Jessica, who was drenched in sweat and tears. The dim light of a single bulb cast trembling shadows over her face. Her auburn hair stuck to her cheeks, and her breathing came in ragged gasps. She gripped Tank's hand with surprising strength. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "It's too early." Tank tried to sound steady. "You're strong. You just gotta breathe, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth." His deep voice rumbled like distant thunder. He had seen death before too many times, but birth scared him more. Beside him knelt Mary, a woman in her 40s, the only female member of Iron Demons. She had short black hair, streaked with grey, grease-stained fingers, and the calm eyes of someone who had patched up more wounds than most doctors. Mary had been a combat medic before she traded uniforms for leather jackets. Her voice was soft, but firm. "It's early, but not impossible. We'll keep her steady till help comes." Jessica clutched the photo of her father against her chest, tears mixing with rainwater. "My dad used to fix bikes here," she murmured. "I can almost smell the oil on his hands." Mary smiled faintly. "He'd be proud. You came to the right place." Back in the main room, the bikers prepared for what might come. Snake worked at the window, setting up an old radio jammer from his stash of illegal toys. His wiry frame was hunched over wires and circuits, his fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from caffeine and too many sleepless nights. "If they call for backup, they'll be talking to ghosts," he muttered. Ray handed Wolf a drink, watching the older man tighten the makeshift bandage. "You really saw him kill someone?" the young biker asked. Wolf nodded slowly. His voice was hoarse. "I saw him smile while he did it." Ray swallowed hard, glancing toward the door. "Then he won't stop tonight." Wolf's eyes were ice. "Neither will we." Jack hung up the phone and turned to face them. "Reynolds is sending a team, but it'll take time. We hold the line until then." The thunder outside rumbled closer, rolling through the valley. For a moment, everyone was quiet except for the sound of Jessica's cries from the back. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was the sound of a life fighting to arrive before death caught up. Wolf wiped the blood from his arm and stood. "I'll watch the back," he said. Jack studied him for a moment. "You sure you're good?" Wolf managed a crooked grin. "I've had worse." He limped toward the hallway, his boots echoing on the wet floorboards. The closer he got, the more he could hear Jessica whispering between contractions, words to a child who wasn't even born yet. "You're going to be brave," she said softly. "Braver than me, braver than him." Wolf stopped at the doorway. Tank looked up from where he knelt, sweat glistening on his brow. "She's strong," he said. "But the kid's coming fast." Mary glanced at Wolf. "We'll need hot water and clean towels, and someone needs to keep that bastard from coming back." Wolf nodded once. "That'll be me." He turned back toward the front room. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the bar's cracked mirror. For a split second, he saw his own reflection, older, meaner, but still haunted by that boy in Silver Creek. He wondered if tonight was his chance to make it right. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe it just felt that way. The storm's rhythm became the beat of a war drum. Then Snake's head jerked up from the window. "Headlights," he said. "3 vehicles. Coming fast." Jack cursed under his breath. He didn't waste time. The bikers moved like parts of one machine. Wolf took position near the back door. Tank readied a wrench the size of a forearm. Ray grabbed a sawed-off shotgun. Even Mary, hands stained with oil and blood, kept a pistol within reach. Outside, engines roared closer, then stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Marcus Hale stepped out of the rain. His face was wet, his uniform clinging to his body. His eyes gleamed with something between rage and triumph. Behind him, Peterson and two other officers fanned out with flashlights, beams slicing through the darkness. "Jack!" Marcus shouted through the storm. "You've got 5 minutes to send her out, or I burn this place to the ground." Jack walked to the door, pushing it open just enough for the rain to whip across his face. He raised his voice over the wind. "She's done running, Hale. You want her, you'll have to go through all of us." Marcus smiled, a thin, venomous smile. "Then I hope your brothers are ready to die for a liar and a whore." The words hit the bar like a slap. Ray's finger tightened on his trigger, but Jack held up a hand. "Not yet," he murmured. Wolf appeared behind him, the wound on his shoulder dark against his skin. His voice was cold and calm. "Marcus," he said, "you killed one innocent already. You're not doing it again." Marcus tilted his head, almost amused. "You think you're her savior? You're just another ghost from that prison, clinging to guilt." Wolf didn't blink. "Maybe, but tonight the ghosts are fighting back." Marcus's smile faded. "Then let's see who haunts who." He raised his hand, and the first shot of the night cracked through the storm. The storm raged like a living thing, pounding against the tin roof of the Iron Demon's bar. The old structure shuddered with each gust of wind, as if the storm itself demanded to be let in. Inside, the air smelled of gunpowder, oil, and rain-soaked leather. In the back room, the old repair bay that once belonged to Dean Meyer's Jessica lay on a makeshift bed of blankets and jackets. Sweat soaked through her hair, clinging to her temples, and every breath came with a sound halfway between a sob and a prayer. Mary knelt beside her, sleeves rolled up, her hands steady though her eyes burned with concern. "Breathe, Jess. You're doing fine," she murmured, though she knew fine was the last word for what was happening. "It's too early, but the baby's fighting." "So will you." Jessica tried to smile through the pain. "Is it supposed to hurt this much?" Mary glanced at Tank, who stood near the doorway, his huge hands twisting the rag he held. "That's how you know. It's working," Mary said softly. "You'll see him soon." Wolf stood guard by the back door, his left arm still bleeding through the bandage. The bullet had only grazed him, but the pain throbbed with every heartbeat. His black hair was plastered to his forehead, his jaw clenched so tight it looked carved from stone. Lightning lit his profile, a face weathered by regret, eyes sharp but tired, a man who had seen too much war in too many forms. He watched the shadows beyond the window, waiting for Marcus to come back, because he knew men like Marcus never accepted defeat. Tank broke the silence with a whisper. "Boss says Reynolds is on his way with the feds. We just gotta hold out a bit longer." Mary didn't look up. "Then let's make sure there's something left to hold." Jessica screamed again, the sound rising above the thunder. "Mary, I can't." "Yes, you can," Mary said firmly, her voice the anchor in the chaos. "Push, Jessica, right, now." And in that moment, amid thunder and fear, the first cry of a newborn broke through the storm. It was faint at first, a trembling sound, wet and fragile, but it grew stronger with every second. Tank exhaled in disbelief. "Damn, he made it." Mary lifted the tiny baby, wrapped him in a clean towel, and placed him gently in Jessica's arms. "A boy," she whispered. "You've got a strong one." Jessica stared at the child, tears spilling freely now. He was small, red-faced, but alive. She could feel his heart flutter against her palm. He's breathing," she said through a sob. "He's really breathing." Wolf turned slightly, just enough to look at them. He didn't speak, but for the first time that night his expression softened. Then came the sound that froze every soul in the room. Footsteps, heavy, uneven. getting closer. Mary's eyes flicked to the door. "No," she whispered. The wooden door burst open, and Marcus Hale stepped into the light. He was drenched, his once immaculate uniform torn, the left side of his face smeared with dried blood. The rain plastered his blonde hair to his forehead, and his icy blue eyes gleamed with something unhinged rage mixed with desperation. He raised his pistol, the muzzle shaking slightly as he took in the sight before him. Jessica holding the baby, Wolf standing protectively near, Tank blocking the path. "You," Marcus hissed, his voice cracking, "you think you can hide from me in this filthy hole?" Jessica clutched the baby tighter, her voice trembling but clear. "Please, Marcus, he's just a baby." Marcus's lips twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. "A bastard, you mean? My career, my life, my name ruined by you and that thing." Wolf took a step forward, placing himself directly between Marcus and Jessica. "Put the gun down," he said. "You don't want to do this." Marcus laughed, the sound brittle and hollow. "You think you know what I want?" He leveled the pistol at Wolf. "I want her to watch you die." Lightning struck outside, and in that flash of white, the room erupted into motion. Marcus fired. The bullet sliced past Wolf's arm, tearing through his sleeve but missing flesh. Wolf lunged forward, tackling Marcus to the ground. The gun clattered across the floor, spinning beneath a toolbox. They struggled, rolling across the greasy floorboards. Marcus's strength came from fury, Wolf's from purpose. Marcus grabbed a wrench and swung it, grazing Wolf's jaw, but Wolf retaliated with a brutal punch to the ribs that knocked the breath out of him. "Stay down!" Wolf roared, but Marcus didn't. He lunged again, reaching for the gun. Wolf caught his wrist, twisted, and with a grunt of rage and pain, slammed him against the wall. Marcus's head struck the wood with a dull thud, and he went limp, collapsing to his knees. Wolf stood over him, chest heaving, rainwater dripping from his hair. For a long second, it seemed Marcus might rise again. But then, the sound of sirens filled the night, the kind of sirens that meant real law had arrived. Jack appeared in the doorway, soaked to the bone, a shotgun in one hand. Behind him, the flashing red and blue lights of federal vehicles painted the room in color. Men in tactical gear poured in, led by Tom Reynolds, the federal investigator Jack had called. Reynolds was in his 50s, graying beard, hard eyes that had seen too many crimes and too little justice. His trench coat was heavy with rain, but his voice carried sharp and clear. "Marcus Hale," he shouted, "Federal Internal Affairs, you're under arrest for murder, assault, and abuse of authority." Marcus stirred, blinking in disbelief. You can't." Reynolds stepped forward, his men pulling Marcus to his feet and snapping handcuffs around his wrists. "You've been untouchable for a long time," Reynolds said coldly. "Not tonight." Jessica, still weak, turned her head toward the commotion. "Is it over?" she whispered. Wolf crouched beside her, ignoring the blood on his arm. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's over." Jessica reached out, touching his hand. "Thank you," she breathed. You kept your promise, just like my father said you would." Wolf looked down at the baby in her arms. The child's tiny fist had closed around his mother's finger. Outside, the storm began to fade, the thunder rolling away into the distance like a retreating enemy. Reynolds gave Jack a curt nod. "We'll take him from here. You did good, old friend." Jack watched as Marcus was led out into the rain, defeated, his eyes empty of the arrogance they once held. "Didn't do it for good," Jack muttered. "Did it because we had to." When the last of the agents left, the bar fell silent except for the steady patter of rain. Wolf stood by the doorway, looking out at the night that had nearly swallowed them. He turned as Jessica spoke again, her voice faint but sure. "He has your eyes," she said. Wolf blinked, unsure if she meant the baby or his father's spirit that lived in this place. Maybe both. He managed a small, tired smile. Then he's already got a fighting chance. Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, glinting off the wet earth. The storm was finally over. Morning sunlight poured through the wide hospital window, warm and gold like honey melting over steel. Jessica blinked awake to the faint rhythm of heart monitors and the smell of disinfectant. Her body ached, but it was the kind of ache that told her she was still alive. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, only that the world was quieter than before. Then she heard it, the soft breathing of a newborn. She turned her head toward the clear plastic crib beside the bed. A small boy, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in time with the fading rain outside. A shadow moved beside her. Wolf sat in a chair by the window, his big frame folded awkwardly into something too small for him. His leather jacket was gone, replaced by a plain grey shirt that made him look almost gentle, though the bandage on his shoulder was a reminder of the storm they'd survived. His face bore the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept in days, but his eyes, deep grey blue, watched the baby with quiet awe. "He's been at it all night," said a new voice from the doorway. It was Nurse Elaine, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and silver-streaked brown hair tied into a bun. Her uniform was crisp, though her tone carried the softness of someone who had seen too many heartbreaks and still believed in miracles. "Won't even let us move the crib without permission," she said, smiling gently at Wolf. Wolf scratched his stubbled jaw, pretending to grumble. Somebody had to make sure he wasn't going anywhere. Jessica's lips curved into a weak smile. "You look terrible." Wolf chuckled softly. "You look worse." They both laughed. Then a tired, fragile laugh that cracked the silence like the first light through storm clouds. Nurse Elaine checked the monitors, nodded in approval, then looked at Jessica. "You're lucky, you know. That man Marcus Hale, he won't be hurting anyone again. They say the evidence from your case helped expose half his department." Jessica's eyes clouded. "He used to say the law was whatever he decided it was." Elaine's voice softened. "Then maybe it's time someone else writes the rules." She gave Wolf a nod and slipped out of the room, leaving the two of them alone with the quiet hum of life beginning again. Jessica reached out, brushing her fingers over her son's cheek. "I still haven't named him," she said. Wolf leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to rush it." She looked at him then, really looked the lines of his face, the old scar along his jaw, the weariness of a man who had carried guilt longer than most carried breath. "I've been thinking," she said. "I want to name him David. David. Iron Myers." Wolf blinked. "Iron?" She smiled faintly. "For the people who saved us, for strength, for the iron demons." Wolf looked at the sleeping child, his mouth tightening as if trying to keep the emotion inside. "David Iron Myers," he repeated softly, almost reverently. "That's a name worth fighting for." 2 weeks later, the headlines hit the papers. Detective Marcus Hale sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The article detailed his crimes, murder, assault, corruption, and named the victims who would finally be remembered. Tom Reynolds stood outside the courthouse that day, grey suit rumpled, cigarette dangling from his lips, watching as Marcus was led away in handcuffs. When reporters asked for comment, he said only, "Justice isn't clean, but it's still justice." Months passed. Montana's winter thawed into spring. The Iron Demon's Bar rebuilt its shattered windows, and the hum of engines once again filled the dusty road outside. 1 year later, the bar had a new neighbor, a small cafe with cream-colored walls, ivy climbing its wooden sign that read, "Dean's Brewhouse." The smell of roasted coffee and warm pastries drifted through the morning air. Inside, Jessica moved gracefully between tables, her hair longer now, the color of dried auburn leaves in sunlight. Her smile carried the kind of peace that only comes after surviving chaos. She had named the cafe after her father, Dean Myers, the man whose ghost had led her to the door of iron demons. The bikers came every morning without fail. They looked out of place amid the cozy decor, tattoos, leather vests, scars and all, but they brought with them laughter, stories, and the scent of gasoline that no amount of coffee could ever drown out. Tank sat at the corner table, his massive arms cradling a mug too small for his hands. Across from him, Mary chatted animatedly about the new espresso machine, her short hair tucked under a red bandana. Ray played peek-a-boo with baby David, who now toddled around on uncertain legs, clutching a small stuffed bear that Wolf had bought him. Wolf himself leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his leather vest patched and polished. He looked older somehow, but in a peaceful way, like a man who had finally laid down a burden. Jessica handed him a cup of black coffee. "You know, you could take a day off from watching over us," she teased. He sipped it, shrugged. "Not really my style." From the corner of the room, Jack appeared. He still wore his old biker jacket, though his hair had gone grayer and his beard thicker. When he smiled, it was with quiet pride. "You've done good, Jess," he said, his voice roughened by years of wind and smoke. Jessica looked around at the room, at Tank's booming laugh, Mary's sharp wit, Ray's easy grin, and Wolf's watchful calm. "No," she said softly. "We've all done good." Jack turned toward the wall by the entrance, where a new plaque hung between framed photographs. On it, engraved in shining brass, were the words, "December 15th, the night Jessica Myers walked through iron doors and gave 23 demons a reason to be human." Below, it was a smaller plaque, newer still, with a single line, "In honor of Dean, Myers' father, brother, and legend of iron." Jack cleared his throat. "You know," he said, "I used to think this place would be the end of us. Turns out it became something else." Wolf nodded. "A beginning." Outside, David's laughter echoed as he played near the parked motorcycles, sunlight glinting off their chrome. The sound drifted into the bar, soft and pure, mixing with the clinking of coffee cups and the low rumble of engines starting. Jessica stepped outside, standing in the doorway, watching her son chase his shadow in the morning light. Wolf joined her, hands in his pockets. "He's got your spirit," Wolf said. Jessica smiled. "No, he's got yours." They stood there together, beneath the sign of the cafe and the fading symbol of iron demons next door, two worlds that shouldn't have coexisted, and yet somehow they did. The wind carried the faint scent of rain, though the sky was clear, and for the first time in a long time, the storm felt truly gone. In the end, this story is not just about bikers or storms or redemption. It is about the quiet miracles that still happen when people choose to protect rather than destroy, when mercy wins over anger, and when love finds its way through the wreckage. Some call it fate, others call it chance, but those who have walked through darkness know it by another name, grace. Perhaps it was God's hand that guided Jessica to that door, that gave strength to men once lost, that allowed a child to be born in the heart of a storm. And maybe that same hand watches over you, wherever you are, reminding you that no soul is too broken to be saved. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Leave a comment to tell us what you felt, and subscribe for more stories that remind us that even in a world of iron and thunder, miracles still happen, and may God bless you and keep you safe tonight.